Joining us now, Joe DeGeneva, legal analyst, a former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia, in a rare Friday appearance. Hey, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Morning, Joe.
My pleasure. There is a second hurricane in the country after Florence, and it's inside the Justice Department.
And who would that happen to be?
Oh, a lot of bad people being found out.
Yeah. Let's start off, though, with something that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had to say about the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, because apparently this is not all said and done. Here's the notorious RBG.
Think of Justice Scalia, who is certainly a known character, if the vote was unanimous. But that's the way it should be. Instead of what it's become, which is a highly partisan show.
So the notorious RBG not making Democrats happy by saying that it's become a highly partisan show. And it's not over. Dianne Feinstein apparently has received a letter it came through someone affiliated at Stanford University who was given this letter. And it has to do with, she won't tell anybody what's in it, so it's from an anonymous source who is accusing Brett Kavanaugh of misdeeds in high school.
Well, first of all, she has had the letter since July.
Oh.
So this is not something new. This was given to her in July, and she has saved it for this moment because they are falling through the floor. The Democrats are. Now, first of all, many people have called this a Hail Mary pass. That is blasphemy to Our Lady. This is a Hail Lucifer pass.
Yeah, no doubt.
This comes from the depths of despair from the Democrats. It is a sign that the Democratic Party is at the end of its wits, and it is about to be taken over by the worst elements of the American left. And apparently there are a lot of people who are just fine with that. The letter itself was given to the FBI by Senator Feinstein. She has shared it with no one, including her Democratic colleagues on the committee, and with none of the Republicans on the committee, including the chairman of the committee. So let's say that the letter is for real, that this person exists, that it was sent to the congressional office of Congresswoman Eshoo, who is another left-wing nut, and it was delivered to Senator Feinstein. Let's assume it's an accurate letter. The FBI took the letter and sent it to the White House, and they said this should be included in your background file on Judge Kavanaugh. They have not launched an investigation, and they are not going to, because there's no basis for it. This is let's assume it's true. This is an allegation about an incident in high school 37 years ago. If anything happened, the statute of limitations has run, and therefore there is absolutely nothing for them to investigate because it does not impinge on anything. But I don't believe anything happened, number one, and I think the reason the person wants to remain anonymous is that she either doesn't exist or she's got problems. So, I mean, what do you do with this? This is a symptom of the derangement of the Democratic Party, and I think it's an insult to the Senate. But after watching Cory Booker the other day, why is anybody surprised?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm sure you heard that Clarence Thomas went after Cory Booker. You know, we heard Ruth Bader Ginsburg speaking out about the Kavanaugh hearings. Here's Clarence Thomas talking about Cory Booker.
People who actually ask the questions at confirmation hearings instead of Spartacus, we use. As long as we're looking at our interests or scoring points or looking cute or being on TV, if you can't debate hard issues honestly, with honor, with integrity, how do we keep a civil society?
Yeah, those are all really great questions.
Yes.
Really
yes,
good
it's all perfect. And I think, again, I don't think Cory Booker did himself any good with either, believe it or not, the mainstream media or reasonable elements in the Democratic Party. I can assure you people like Joe Lieberman and others don't think very much of that. Perhaps Kamala Harris next to him may have enjoyed it. although she's running for the same job he is, President of the United States. I find these people to be so offensive. I worked on the Judiciary Committee for Senator Charles Mathias of Maryland, one of the great U.S. senators ever, at a time when America had real U.S. senators. What we have now are mannequins. Watching this clown, Cory Booker, was an insult to the United States Senate, and as someone who spent years working in the Senate and doing judicial confirmation hearings, including Supreme Court nominations, I'm sickened by these people, utterly sickened by them.
Well, Joe, speaking of sickened, Lisa Page is back in the headlines again with, speaking of DOJ as well, she's talking now, and the text has been made very clear that she and that Peter Strzok character were essentially, I don't want to say planning stories, but they were, I think, giving details to the media for purposes of creating a certain perception. We call it information operations in my business. So on that point, she actually also looks like she may have interned under Clinton. So it's like, man, this is like a soap opera or something. I mean, what do you make of this?
Ask yourself this question.
Yeah.
These text messages were just released within 72 hours ago.
Right.
They contain no national security information, nothing that would damage a source or method.
Right.
And they were withheld for 2 years from the American public by Rod Rosenstein and the people around him. Now, if anybody thinks that those people who did this, held those text messages, should remain in office for any period of time, they're out of their minds. I think what Rod Rosenstein has done is so reprehensible, so unbelievably corrupt politically, so damaging to the United States of America, that the withholding of evidence like this from the American people represents a clear and present danger to law and order in the United States.
No doubt.
I have heard no explanation from Rosenstein and his minions about why these were withheld. But what they do show is, I know why they were withheld. It's so embarrassing to the Department of Justice and the Obama administration people in the FBI and the DOJ, because Rosenstein and the senior people over there do not want to confront the reality that there are certain people in DOJ and the FBI who are going to have to be prosecuted. Those leaks by Page and Strzok were criminal offenses.
Yep.
They were done purposely to do two things: to despoil the name of Donald Trump, but almost as important, to dishonor and to corruptly make Carter Page look like the agent of a foreign power. When Strzok and Page did that, along with James Baker, the general counsel of the FBI, McCabe, and others, they committed criminal acts. They will not be able to get away with it. I can assure you that all of them are going to face criminal charges, either misdemeanors or felonies, for violating the Espionage Act by revealing information from a FISA application, and that the reporters who wrote those stories knew that the information they were getting was false about Carter Page. And they were publishing those stories in order to hurt the president. Forget Carter Page.
Right, Joe.
Every one of those reporters is a criminal defendant.
Joe,
I'll remind you of what Potter Stewart said in his concurring opinion in New York Times versus Sullivan, where they created the libel exception for the papers. He said, you can publish this, but you can be prosecuted for it.
Yep.
Joe DeGenova, thanks you.
Joe.
We appreciate you so much. You're always so illuminating when you join us, and we really appreciate the Friday appearance. Have a great weekend.
Joining us now, we have Sara Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor. Greg Jarrett is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russian Hoax. Thank you both for being back with us. Let's give a summary of what we learned this week. I think we got more Strzok Page emails and insight just again as to how desperate they were before the election and after the election to destroy Donald Trump. and to hide all their nefarious activities.
And this is a disaster, Sean, for the FBI and the DOJ. Not only was collusion a complete hoax based on fabricated evidence, but as you point out, the FBI, the DOJ, the DNI, the CIA, all leaking to frame Donald Trump. And these text messages prove it. There was a media leak strategy. Literally, Strzok and Page were dumb enough to text about it, and then they bragged about their success. The article is out. Well done, Page. It's a complete lie for Strzok and his lawyer to say, oh, no, we were stopping leaks. No, that text.
Well, that was an outright lie by his attorney. I mean, the attorney had to know these other text messages were coming out, didn't he?
Yeah, and this is what gives lawyers a bad name. They're more than willing to misrepresent and deceive people on behalf of their clients. This is some of the most incriminating evidence yet of Obama's Justice Department, James Comey's FBI, in a deliberate scheme to use their government positions for corrupt, illegal purposes. They invented the whole thing, then leaked the false evidence to the media, which was more than willing to run with the narrative that Trump colluded with Russia to win the election. They knew it wasn't true. It was all a lie, and they knew it.
They knew it from the beginning. But if you go to this integrity issue, I take offense, Peter Strzok says. Well, he's caught red-handed in all of this. That was something that he told Congressman Mark Walker of North Carolina and called it insulting, and I take offense, and it's not correct. And Walker was focused on the questioning of the volume of text between him and Page. Look, there's over 50,000 messages. I don't think we have 1,000 of them yet, do we, Sarah Carter?
No, we don't. And I think this is what's so stunning. If you look at the defense, Peter Strzok's attorney tried to push forward, saying, oh, they were just trying to stop these leaks. And then you look at the text messages that came out on Wednesday, those specifically. Strzok writes to Page saying, also, apparently the Times, meaning the New York Times, is angry with us about the Washington Post scoop and the earlier discussion we had about the Schmidt piece that had so many inaccuracies. Too much detail here, but I told Mike, which I believe, and I spoke to a couple of U.S. officials, was Mike Corton, former head of the Public Relations Office for the FBI. He also resigned. And Andy, being Andy McCabe, that they need to understand we were absolutely dealing in good faith with them. The FISA one, coupled with the Guardian piece from yesterday, we were dealing in good faith with them. They're saying, we've been talking to the Washington Post and to the Times, and the reason the Times was so upset, Sean, was because right during that time is when the Washington Post did the big expose, the first big story on Carter Page, that came out and said the FBI obtained a FISA warrant to monitor former Trump advisor Carter Page. That was April 11th, 2017. In April, former FBI Director James Comey had just authorized the third FISA renewal on Carter Page. So they were basically leaking the most highly classified information to the Washington Post to change the narrative against President Trump and put all of this onus on the Trump administration that they had basically propagated lies, just like